I'm going to talk today on managing heavy mural thrombus in aneurysmal disease. So the problem is that these are complex necks, and complex necks are defined as short, wide, angulated, and conical, or SWAC, with calcified elements or thrombosis. They're difficult to work out what the best option is a lot of the time, and they have different challenges in creating a seal depending on what that neck looks like. A neck with heavy thrombus load is particularly difficult because it can toothpaste into the renal arteries and cause more problems. So what can we do about that? Well, this is the problem that we have. You can see quite a conical thrombosed neck. It's not super heavy thrombus, but there are elements of it which are 6.3 millimeters in depth, and it's thrombotic all the way around. So we would call this a diseased neck, and probably this is going to be a juxtarenal problem later on. We just caught it early. It's also got quite a lot of iliac disease in this patient. There are some options that we can use. We can use endoanchors in thrombus with a depth of less than 2 millimeters. So if we measure this all the way around circumferentially, we can get endoanchors into there, and they do a fairly decent job. Can we run that video, thanks? Okay, anyway, that showed that the sac side had gone down with those endoanchors. Another way of doing this is to take the landing zone higher up, so we can use fenestrated grafts. We just heard of some of those tools that we can use, and one of these is utilised not too well, I don't think, in our units anyway, which is just a bilateral renal fenestration with a scallop. It's a very useful tool to take the landing zone higher up in the neck, where it might be a little more advantageous to get a seal for a longer period of time. And in this case, just a bifurcated device, a bifurcated EVAR with sac regression. But another option that we can use is changing the graft type. So if we look at this device, the Alto device, we know that there are some issues now with the radial force creating long-term problems with necks, especially when they are diseased and short, with heavy thrombus in them. They're diseased necks, and they can cause dilatation over time, especially sometimes when you get type 2 endoleaks or endoleaks that you can't see and there's no sac regression. There's a great paper in JVIR a couple of years ago that showed that those patients who had undiagnosed type 2 endoleaks were more likely to develop a type 1A endoleak afterwards. And it's probably a combination of the pressure inside the graft that we can't measure and also the radial force. So changing the way the neck is sealed might help that. So you need 7 millimeters of infrarenal neck. You can put it in a thrombosed neck, so it's good for that. And it looks a bit like this. Can you run the other two videos if you could? Thank you. And the other one if you could. So this is what it looks like. It looks a bit odd at the top end, and when you look at these in surveillance, it can look as though the neck of the graft is stenosed, especially when it's angulated. It can look like there's a 50% stenosis in there, but the graft is actually fully open. But this was a real interesting paper that came out in 2024. This is the UK COMPASS trial. It was an observational study. They narrowed down 8,800 patients using HES data, the hospital episode statistics in the UK, and also the NVR data. So it's a real world study on 1,916 patients, and they looked at standardizing these into standard risk patients and high risk patients using the British Aneurysm Repair Score. So there are two arms to this, and then they looked at these complex necks and put them into three groups: the 0 to 4 millimeter group, the 5 to 9 millimeter group, and then the around 10 millimeter group. So you ended up with 6 groups in total. And they looked at the overall survival rate for these patients. And what was really interesting for this is if you look at the curves, the purple is FEVAR, the blue is open surgical repair, and EVAR in these 0 to 4 millimeter necks, so very short necks, juxtarenal aneurysms. FEVAR came out better over the short to medium term than open surgical repair. And that's something that we haven't really thought of in the past as being a thing, I suppose. And you look at EVAR, when you do EVAR, which is off IFU, it has terrible results. And the same on the high-risk patients, FEVAR was better than open surgical repair out to 36 months. So juxtarenal aneurysms, FEVAR may be safer than open surgical repair, and I think that was a real take-home point. For the 5 to 9 millimeter standard risk, well, open surgical repair in the standard risk group was better than FEVAR and EVAR, but EVAR in the high-risk groups was better than the other two. So in those with those sorts of necks, then it might be better to think about open surgical repair or FEVAR or EVAR in the higher risk groups. And finally, in the 10 millimeter neck group, then open surgical repair was equivocal or EVAR was just better in the very short term, the first 6 months, than open surgical repair. And if you think about this, this may be due to the fact that when EVAR 1 and 2 were produced, which showed a 3% mortality difference, and that has been transferred across the board, I know, but we have got much better anesthetics now. We've got vascular hubs, vascular units, and ways of dealing with these that are much better. And so the open surgical repair may have got better over that time, but you can see that the crossover point there for those necks is about 12 months. So a very simplified conclusion to this would be that in heavily thrombosed necks, which is defined as complex and short necks, it may be better to think about something like a FEVAR option. If there is a landing zone below the renals and it's heavy thrombus, then you could consider the Alto device. And in other necks, EVAR is feasible, but there may be issues with that in the long term. Thank you very much.